video on this. So when you guys are building your scenes, you should try to watch out for the scale of the scene. That's sort of one thing that's important. So I noticed a few people too. So in some cases when you have windows, you can kind of just stick them on top of or in front of the sort of base of your building shape. That can work. What I tend to do is actually build things a little differently. I usually kind of start either with a basic layout, so doing a basic shape with a box, a cube, or even just drawing like an outline and then extruding it up. In this case, I'll start from sort of a basic window shape and show you how I can kind of create a modular setup for a building. So I'm going to set my window size to be, I guess, about 3 feet wide. So it'll be 90 centimeters across. So 1 foot is 30 centimeters, and then maybe, I guess I'll go about 5 feet up. So it'll be 150 high. And usually depth-wise, windows can be, depending on how the windows are built, they can be half a foot deep or a few inches deep. So in this case, I'll go 15 units deep. So I'll often start with something as simple as this, and then I will actually take the top face and extrude it. So this is in the case of, so some people have complicated windows that have archways, right? If they have archways, it can be a little bit tricky to do. So I'm going to actually collapse these two edges down like so. And if you want a very kind of high arch, we can raise this up. So I've literally got kind of like a peak here. And it's really simple. I simply go to bevel edge, increase the segments, and I will generally keep this an even number. And then as you adjust the fraction out, you don't want to set the fraction to 1 because you'll have a duplicate of edges here. They'll actually be overlapping. So we want to just dial that back just a little bit. So this is a good way to get an arch into a window frame or a doorway, whatever the case may be. In this case, I'm doing roughly an arch here. So I'm going to increase the count on this as well. So again, you want to be careful about poly counts too. You may want to do a bit of math in this and calculate how many copies are you going to have, how many times to figure out the poly count. So I'll set this to 18, and I think a fraction of 0.9 should be good. Okay, so what I was going to mention too is that a lot of times the windows are they're sort of an inset, so they're cut into the surface. So in this case, I'm actually kind of building this as if it were the cut in. So I'm going to delete the two front faces. Go back to object mode. I'm going to simply go to mesh display. And then I'll go to reverse. So that flips the polys the correct way. Something else that often happens is you get some smoothing here. So I actually usually I want to fix this right away. So I'll go into surfaces, mesh display, and go to soften harden. So I get a nice kind of crisp edge at the corner and then smoothness across the archway. So what I would do after that, it's very simple. I'll just take the outer edge, double click it, and then hit Control E to do an extrude, and extrude along the Z. So we get this kind of border. And something I often do here is I'll scale the sides in so they're nice and level. I'll grab both sides and scale them up a little bit. It's going to look a little messy at first. I'll double click the outer border, Control, click and drag over the bottom edges, and then I'll scale the top edges flat, essentially. And we can scale them in, or maybe I'll shrink this down a little bit. Oops, yeah. So I'll take the vertices here. I'll go to vertex mode, grab a bunch of the verts except for this corner vert here. Okay, so I'll just shift right click and go to merge vertices. I want them to all merge to a point. I'll show you why in a second. So I'll hit 30. Seems to work in this case. So anything within 30 units will scale down. So I'll do the same thing. Hit G to repeat my last command. Type in 30 for the threshold, and you see that kind of welds them all down, right? What I'll do next is I'll go over to the modeling toolkit. Go to target weld, which is over here, target weld. And then I'll simply move the target over here. And I'll stitch that one over there as well. So the main reason I'm doing this is, depending on how you build your windows or the way you're building them, You want things to be modular, basically meaning that you build one module and then you can duplicate this multiple times very, very quickly. Now what I should probably do before I do anything else is maybe do a quick unwrap so I get that out of the way. Always a good idea. So I'm literally going to just grab all the faces. I'll go to create planar, and I probably want to do this, I think, from a z-axis. I'm going to go project, which is close. And then I'll grab these faces here. I'm going to shift right click and go to create UV shell. Now remember, I didn't scale things. I set the proportions right. I didn't scale it, so nothing's distorted yet. I'll grab all the faces again. Let's go face. There we go. Control Shift A, unfold, and I'll try a quick unfold. And these interior edges, I usually want to split them off as well. So I'm going to shift double click around like so, create UV shell. And then I'll actually grab, again, these two faces, I'm going to break these off as well. So I'll go create UV shell. So I'm basically going to have, you know, sort of 4 islands out of that. So I'll grab everything again, unfold. If we do a quick checker on that, right, it's pretty good. It's pretty clean. It should be well packed. So that's pretty much it. I'm pretty much ready to go with the rest of this. So if you're building framings and stuff like that, what I often do is I keep building off of what I've already done in a lot of cases. So I'll shift right click and go to duplicate face, which actually creates a separate object. So I'll pull this plane out in front, click off of that. Now I've got this plane. I'll take the plane and scale it in, right? And I'll push this back. So this is still technically a separate object. I'll grab this edge up here, move this up like so, just so there's a bit of overlap. I don't want to waste too much space though. So I'm being extremely economical. I'm not wasting any space. I'm not wasting anything. I'm only grabbing the 2 outer edges of this thing now. Hit Control E, which is extrude. Pull that back so it just overlaps or hits contact with the window behind. Just make sure this is also, let's grab that. So I'm just going to grab these bottom edges. And then I'll just tuck that below like so. Now if I go back to object mode, this thing is still separate. So I'm going to hit Control D. I'll rotate this thing 90 degrees. There we go. Again, I'll take the outer vertices or outer edges. Doesn't really matter what you grab. I just like to bring them in. Again, I'm really trying to make sure I get just enough coverage, but I have no back-facing polys here, right? So think about this. Depending on how many windows you have, this can add so much to the scene in terms of mesh. So let me maybe tuck this down and in a bit. I'll turn off the grid as well, so it's a little easier to see. So this is kind of a very basic, very kind of cheap window framing that I often use. I'll then go to duplicate special. Actually, before I do that, let me grab both of these objects. UV editor, right? Grab the shells, unfold. There we go. So I'll grab this piece, go to edit, duplicate special. I'm going to reset just so I avoid having to reset every single setting. Maybe every 20 units I'll move up, and then I'll make, I don't know, maybe like 5 copies or so. Don't like that, so I'm going to go every 40 and do maybe 3 copies instead, right? So that's it. That's a very, very quick and easy window, right? So what I'll do is I'll grab all these individual pieces, and then I'll combine them with this window. So I'll grab the framing last, shift right click, go to combine, and I want to make sure I use the last pivot's object. So I want to maintain the pivot being centered on this window in the combine option. So apply and close. So this is now one piece. Go to UV editor, grab all the pieces again. So I'll go to face mode, Control Shift A, and I believe my layout options should be the same as last time. Let's go to layout options. Yeah, so everything's set the way I had it before. Go to layout. There we go. Everything's packed in, right? UV's done. Now, what's really great about this technique is we can go edit, duplicate special, So I'll do another duplicate special. I'll go reset, and I'll offset this. So I think, what did I say my window was? Like 30 units wide. So I might make this, maybe it was 60. So I think I might have to move this 120 units. Make a couple of copies. I'll make them instances for now, and I'll just have it group under the world. Okay, so I'll undo. Duplicate special. And I'll just keep tweaking these until I get kind of the right spacing here. So let's do 180. It's too much, so probably like 160, 165. 160. Now for me, I think that's pretty close. I don't think I need to go much further than that. So I've got, you know, 5 windows here. Now what's always a good idea, you know, just in case, hit Control D, duplicate, save a copy somewhere. In this case, I'll grab all of these. I'll go to combine. I'll go to vertex. So the reason I welded all those points to the corners, number 1, it keeps the mesh clean. Number 2, I can now grab these pieces and make them one solid wall, basically, right? So if I go do that right now, shift right click, merge verts. Again, I'll probably increase the threshold to like 5. So I know that they should weld up. Let's just make sure they do. So I'll try that one again. I think I missed a vertex there. There we go. So now we should have one solid piece. If you grab one poly and expand the selection by hitting shift greater than, it should expand out to pretty much all these pieces, right? Alright, so that's pretty decent. So I'm using an example I had earlier today, but so in some cases, you know, some windows may be the same, just wider. We can, in this case, probably scale this, and I would probably do this at the face level. So I'll just scale from face level to make this a little wider. And let's do this. So I'll go into a top view. Top view. I'm going to hit D, which activates the move pivot, and I'm going to hit V for vertex snap, so it snaps there. So I'll turn off D. Let's turn on wireframe so I can see actually where the wireframes are. I'll oops, there. Just make sure I'm on maybe the objects pivot here. Okay, and then I'll hit V. Hit V again, and I'll sort of snap this if I can. Ugh, this thing doesn't want to behave. Let's try to snap the vertex there. Come on, Maya. Yeah, misbehaving right now, Maya, but that's okay. So in this case, I'm just going to kind of line up the two pieces. So sometimes when there's an offset too, you know, you need to try to. Oh, I see what I'm doing. Should be in object mode. That would actually help. There we go. So hit V, snap to that vertex, turn off D, and then I can hit V again, which should snap to there. So once that's snapped, I can then kind of do an offset here. So what I do next is grab these two, combine them again. So I'll grab this piece, then this piece second, and combine. So again, that maintains a pivot in the dead center or it should maintain a pivot in the center of one of those windows. Go to edge, grab these two edges, and then it's a very simple bridge. Now you can have edges that go across the middle. That's fine, as long as you keep the number of edges on the open sides consistent so that they all weld together, right? That makes things nice and easy. So you guys hopefully can see how fast this is going, right? So now if I do, let's say, try a mirror, for example. Oops, not bridge. What's going on there? Sorry, let's get out of there. Let's go to mirror. I guess on the X, and I'll try to go positive. There we go. All right, so I can very quickly expand out this this building really, really quickly, right? Let's make sure I'm getting no garbage here. As I go to, so in this case, this is one annoyance with the polymer. I find I often have to delete the history, so I'll hold Alt-Shift-D, and that'll immediately clear the history on that. This is something I'm experimenting with a bit in Maya too. You know, you can try to clone this stuff. So if I go mirror again, right, I can try to switch the. I'll go back to the X axis, and then rotate. And you want to make sure you've got an angle snap turned on. So I'll double click the manipulator tool, which is active over here on the left hand side. It's right in here. So this is when you're in poly mirror. I'm going to go discrete rotation. 15-degree snap is okay. So I'm going to rotate this thing, which should be, I guess, 45 degrees. And then I'll move this arrow out. So I really want to just kind of get into the corner to snap. Now again, this thing can get a little messy. So in some cases, it might just be better. Instead of using the mirror tool, in this case, I might just hit Control D to clone this thing and do a standard rotation, right? And then if I hit the D key again, hold V, snap this out here, turn off D, switch to the move tool, hold V again, and then I can snap to that corner. So this is one way you can very quickly build, right, a building. Now this is if it happens to be uniform. So you do have to kind of figure out, you know, where are things, you know, where are they the same, where are they different? A lot of times a facade will be different than the sides of a building, right? And if we do this, let's just go edit, duplicate, special again. 160, that's on that axis. So I think, what was the height of this thing? I think I'll just go like 250. Let's make a couple duplicates here. It's close. Let's try 300. So maybe 280. We'll split the difference. 275. Yeah, I'll go 280. Alright, so we're getting pretty close to a pretty complex building done in a mere matter of minutes. Now this is a very simplified version of this, so I want you to keep that in mind. But I find if you break things down into their simplest components, so this is sort of what I get in the outline, break things down to their smallest components, you know, do the unwrapping as you go, keep it simple and keep it light. There's one other thing I was going to show as well, which is this. So if we have window trim, this is where I might go back. So I could double click on edge loop around here. I'll go shift, right click and say, actually sorry, not shift, right click, space bar, modify, convert. You can convert polygon edges to curves, okay? So I'll go into the options for this. I usually start with a linear, so I'll go linear, convert. So what that does is it gives me basically a sort of NURBS. Let me just modify center pivot. So I've got a little NURBS curve here, right? So what I can do with that, I can create, let's say, a little cylinder. Okay. So this is something I should have done before I did all the duplicating and copying, right? But some windows are very complicated. They have a lot of trim. So I'll kind of bring this cylinder over to that curve there. Okay, let's bring it back and in. Okay, so line this up roughly with this line here. So I'll do something along these lines. I'll take this, duplicate it one time. Let me pull this out a little bit. I might create a little box as well. Or, you know, I'll just use the shape I've got, actually. So I'll take these two meshes. I'm going to just boolean them together as a union. It's kind of one of my cheap methods of working in Maya here. So I'll select the top, deselect this, delete the top. It's going to seem a little weird, but for me this is kind of the cleanest way to get my mesh working. Go to fill hole, invert my selection and delete the rest now. So I've got a very, very simple kind of outline. I'll go to mesh cleanup as well. It's a good idea to keep this stuff clean just in case. Delete the history. And yeah, let's go into vertex here for a second. So this is going to be kind of like a back face as well. So I'll take out maybe a bunch of these. Take this edge. Let's keep it even actually. I'll delete a couple of these points too. There we go. Take that edge. Just going to try to scale it flat. Okay, so I'll extrude the edge. And then maybe extrude these edges as well. Like so. Okay, that's good enough. So I'll take this object, I'm going to go to Modify Center Pivot again on this thing. And I'll try to just sort of set it roughly where I want it to be. Place it down here. Grab all the faces, then grab the edge. And Shift right click, go to Extrude. Extrude along selected. I usually give a ton of divisions to this thing, 48 divisions. Hit Extrude. And we basically get a framing that we can roughly use. There is a little bit of touch-up often with this stuff. It does get a little messy, so I'll go to that spline. Oops, actually I should, grab this object, delete its history because it's still connected to the NURBS curve. Delete the curve, grab the mesh, reverse the mesh. So now we've got a bit of trim, right? Mine is still not kind of great at some of this stuff, so I usually find I have to tweak some of the corners and the turns in this stuff. So I'm going to, yeah, let's grab this thing. Let's just reset the tool here. So I'll delete some of these faces too. I'll probably wind up mirroring this stuff back and over to clean it up. There we go. So I'm just going to raise this thing a little bit. I may scale it a bit flatter as well. There we go. And if you have any extra edge loops sort of in the middle here, I will tend to take these out as well, just to get a nice sort of straight line. And let's see. Okay, so I'll take this thing. I'll try to just give this a mirror as well. Let's see, X, positive, negative. Well, you can see the pivot is sort of all the way back there. So one thing I should always check, modify center pivot. There we go. So the pivot of the object matters, right, when it comes to mirroring. So I'm going to do the mirror again, this time on the X positive, I believe it should be. No, still wants to be weird. Let me just double check something too. I may have to freeze and then bake the pivot, so I'll try that as well. Modify freeze and then modify bake pivot. All right, let's try this one more time. Oh, it's still on world. That was what I was missing. So I should have set this to object and then set this to X positive. There we go. So it's one kind of quick way, and again, let me delete the history on that. That's one quick way to get the trim done, and then you can sort of position that where it needs to be, right? So you can very, very quickly mass produce a building with its windows and its fixtures really, really quickly inside of Maya.